welcome back to another card making tutorial. So this week we are already in July, hard to believe. And while we did one July card last week, the 4th of July, today we're gonna concentrate a little bit on a program or workshop from our new July-August catalog. This is it. And we're gonna use the Cape Cod in this case. So in the Cape Cod is a beautiful paper pack for mostly beach, but I'm gonna use this for some of our lake pictures as well, but that will be another tutorial. So here is the card making workshop, and as you can see here, so this workshop comes with the papers, cardstock, embellishments. You get the regular cards 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, but you also get the slimline cards. You get a stem set and you get dies. And then here is the stem set and bigger to show you. So I just love, this is a great background stem, or just for anything where you just have a little bit too much white space, you need a little bit extra texture on your cards or on your layouts. This is great. Love the little palm leaves. And then we have just a little hello from me. You are so special. Thank you, and let's celebrate. So these are the sets, and I got this one here, and it's just a really great set. So I love this set, and this is a nice size for background. And these are your dies. So we have a whole bunch of different dies here, and they cut like butter. For this tutorial, so since I prepped this for my classes, I didn't really want to crank these through like 30 times 25. No, not that much, but times 5. So yeah, I didn't really want to do this by hand. So I used my Cricut machine, and instead I downloaded the digital art collection that comes with this paper pack to make it a little bit easier on me. So if you ever wonder, so this is the digital art collection right here. This entire item you can buy. You download it to your computer, you unzip it, and then you upload it into a design space from Cricut. Or if you have a Silhouette or Brothers, you can use the SVG file and load them up to your machine. And I used the star, the little cent dollar, and the seashell here. And they're double layered. I only used the one layer like it would have been with the die. The only thing that I can maybe make you aware of, if you use these, so when they pop up on screen, they're already sized perfectly to cut without problem. Now with the Cricut, sometimes when you start to make something a little bit smaller, depending on how delicate it is, it might not cut as perfectly. So I will show you a sample where that happened. This can be, number one, I usually have a good blade in there, but if your blade is a little bit older, or if your mat that you're using is used quite a few times, it's got grooves in it from cutting before, little paper pieces. So if you have something really delicate, that might not work so well. So when it pops up on screen, try not to make it too much smaller. If you go larger, it's not a problem, but if you go smaller, it tends to give you a little issue sometimes. So just a fair warning. But other than that, it works great. So with this set, you would make 4 cards. So these 4, and you do 4 of each. And we're gonna concentrate on this one here. And again, you know, the workshop kit comes with all instructions, how to assemble, which pieces go where, how to cut them. So really nice instruction with this set. So now let's get going. So I changed mine just a tad because again, it is for a class project. So I always have to keep in mind how much time we have, how advanced my scrapbookers are, card makers are, and how much time we need to make sure we stay within our 2-hour range. All right, so this is how the card looks like. Really cute. And then this is the inside. Just a little hello from me. And we're gonna start putting this together. So if you are like me and you like to make more than just one card. Let's say you have a whole array and you just want to use the one design from it. To make the most out of this paper, so this paper originally was cut, I think 3 1/4 by 3 1/4. Let me check. And I had to, because I didn't have enough paper of this. Oh, 3 1/2 by 3 1/2. So I didn't have enough paper, so I used, and I cut mine at 3 by 3, which makes these sides a little bit smaller, not as big. But you know what? You don't only miss a little bit here and there, which isn't really a big deal, but it just worked better for me with the papers I had to align them and get the most out of it for the entire class set. So in class, they will have to cut these. I'm just trying to space it out evenly here on my mat. So this is about right here. This is about where the side goes. So these little dots we stamped in toffee, and this is from an older set. It's called Background Elements, and I know you have seen this before. I use this quite a bit on things. D2123, it's still available, and I just like these because they bring texture to your elements. They just make it easier when you need splatters, but you want them controlled. You don't want them to go everywhere. So in this case, we are using the bigger ones, and I purposely put the big blobs on the bottom here because they mostly are covered up later. I only wanted the little ones showing, so that's why they're a little bit weird spaced. But usually what I would have my ladies do is put the corners on first and then stamp the blobs in there. But for those who work these from home, naturally I have to pre-stamp them because they don't have the stamp set at home. So that's how we done it. All right, so this one goes flush with the left side. And again, I'm just using my mat here to make sure it is centered. And it's nice because on the grid you can see where it's at, if you're in the right spot or not. Then we use the other side. And we do the same thing. I can actually move this up a little bit so I know. And it lines up with the right side. And touches in the middle. There you go. Now the blue square, and I use the darker side. So if you see here, I know it's hard to tell, our cardstock is two-tone, so we have a lighter and a darker side. So this is the lighter side, this is the original color, and you can pick which one you want. Sometimes it comes in handy if you have a that color but a lighter hue to use on a project, or vice versa. All right, and I'm just gonna eyeball this here somewhat in the center. I would say we'll leave it here. All right, now this one here. So what I did here was I stamped the background with this background stamp and the periwinkle first, and then stamp my phrase "You're so special" onto it with black ink. And this needs some pop-ups. So again, we're just gonna put a couple foam spacers on here. And sometimes I put a few in the middle so it doesn't cave in when you send it in the mail. It's not always necessary, but in this case, I want it to stay nice and straight. All right, and then we just center this. So now we have our cuts. So these are my die cuts that I did from the digital art collection, Cape Cod. And I cut mine, and that's a little trick I learned from Janice over at the design team. So I wanted to use the lighter side of the paper. So toffee, this is the darker, this is the lighter side. But when I cut them, what I did was I put them the lighter side face down, so on the adhesive, had the darker side showing. And when I cut my images, I mirrored them. And the reason being, so when you look close, when you have a die that you use to cut paper, you know how the die kind of like pushes into the paper and rounds the edges. So you always have a nice, clean, round edge. Well, with the die cutting machines, they use a blade. So they go straight in and they cut through the paper. So you end up often with these little white, you can see a little bit, since our paper has a white core, you can see a little bit these white edges showing. If you mirror it and cut it out, which means this is how it sticks on the paper, on the mat, and then I take it off and I flip it over because I'm going to use the back side here, you can see those white lines are gone beside this little piece here. But it's even extremer on this one here. So normally you can see here the little cutting lines where the blade goes into the paper and it shows. But when you flip it over, this is the side we're going to use, you don't see those anymore. So that was one trick. So here is, well, these ones are like a, I would say 5/8 or so smaller than the original that came in the digital art collection. This one here, the same way, I cut it a little bit thinner, and what happened was down here, sometimes the blade had a hard time cutting this because it was downsized a little bit, which is not a big deal because we're going to end up covering it up anyway. So I just left them the way they are, and I'm going to use them. But that's just when you have something really delicate, just remember when you downsize it and you do it even just a little bit, or really small, it might not cut well. So just keep that in mind. To give this a little bit dimension, I think you can see here a little bit. So I went around the edges and just put a little bit of the toffee ink on there, which I think just makes it a little bit more realistic. And here's our toffee ink, and I just use a sponge, and this is our round sponge, and I just cut wedges out of it. That's easier. So this is the side we want to use, and I'm just going around the edges here with my sponge. And the same here with our star. Just have to be a little bit more diligent that I don't bend it. If you have a finer little brush you could use, but the sponge is fine for me. It does the trick. And then we do the seashell. And I'm just careful with the bottom here. Okay. And that's all we need to do with these ones. So let's put our little sea star on. So what I did with the star was I put a foam square in the middle. And then I used liquid adhesive, just a tiny bit on the ends here. If you can see, a little bit dried up glue here. Okay, come on. There you go. Okay, so we just, and I use my tweezers. That makes it easier to hold. And then I just put a little bit adhesive on the tip here. Doesn't need a lot. And always remember to put your needle back in there. And then I just tuck this underneath the raised one here, about here. There we go. So then I just press down my ends, and in the middle it stays up with a little foam spacer. So I really like that it's not completely flat, but not super thick. And I do the same with the seashell. So I just use the big one here. You won't see that at the end. It disappears behind the paper here. And then we do the same thing. We take our adhesive, and I just go on the outside a little bit, and that should be it. And then this one tucks underneath here, just a little, like so. And just with those two foam things underneath, see how it gives you a little bit of 3-dimension. All right, and then this one here gets a few more. This one we can raise completely. So I'm just gonna put this one here and one here. And in this case, I don't put one in the middle because I didn't want to show it in between those openings there. And it should hold up with all of these around. And then we put this one somewhere here. All right. Now all this is left. Put our little bling in there, and I thought this is just a perfect spot. Put one in the middle here and one in the middle here. And then all we need to do is check the inside. So if you're in class, you have to stamp these on the inside too. And then I just use the black pen. And again, nothing fancy, just some water waves around the edges here. And this one is done too. So I hope you like this little tutorial, and if you like to see more videos, I would appreciate if you just give me a thumbs up, and that way YouTube also knows what to show you more often. And check back with me next week for another card making tutorial. Thank you so much for being here and watching, and see you next week. Bye bye.